Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be centered on this gorgeous glitter eyeshadow look that I did on my beautiful dark skin client. So if you're interested, please keep on watching. So I start off by brushing her eyebrow hairs in place, and then I take my dark brown eyeliner pencil and I use nice soft short strokes in order to follow the shape of her natural brow and redefine her arch. So I start by outlining the eyebrow, and then I use like hair strokes to fill in the gaps. Next, I take my spoolie and I use that to continue to brush the hairs in place and to also blend the product into her eyebrows. And then I repeat the same on the next side. Now I'm taking my LA Girl Pro Concealer in the shade Beautiful Bronze, and I'm using a flat brush just to carve out her eyebrows and to perfect them a bit. Now I'm speeding up the video a bit just so that it won't be too long, but in actuality I do take my time when I'm carving out the brows so that it can be as symmetrical as possible. When I'm carving out my client's eyebrows, I like to spread the concealer all over the lid to act as a base for the eyeshadow application. I went ahead and carved out the other eyebrow, and now I'm blending the concealer out with a fluffy brush. You'll notice that I'll only be showing you certain sides of the makeup application, and that's just to save time, and also other angles weren't really showing what I was doing, so I decided to edit it out. Now, I've been asked before why I choose to set the lid with powder, and I do this because when I'm blending in the crease, I'm using a lot of windshield wiper and circling motions, and if I don't set the concealer, the eyeshadow would stick in certain spots and it would be patchy. So you would leave the concealer wet when you're applying shadows more to the base because you want it to stay in one spot. But when you're doing crease colors, you would use powder so that it can blend better. So now I'm just putting this pink shade in her crease and blending it out with a fluffy brush. Sometimes when applying makeup on clients, I like to lift the eyebrows just to make sure that I'm getting the eyeshadow into the crease as good as I can get. And now you can see that I'm applying a dark purple shade into the pink, and I'm just going to be blending that out. I forgot to show you what shade it was, but it was just a regular dark purple. So now I'm taking my LA Girl Pro Concealer in the shade either Warm Honey or Almond. I just took a lighter shade and I'm putting that on her lid, and then I let her look up so that the concealer can basically show the shape of her eyeball, and then I use that as my guideline to carve out the lid. Another way to carve out client's eyelid is by lifting the brow a bit and then following where the sink of the eyeball would be, but I just like to have them look up because it's easier for me. So now when I'm carving out the lid, I do it in a winged shape because that's the way I want the eyeshadow to shape on the lid.
Take my hand and hold it tight.
Now that both eyelids are carved out, I'm taking this pink champagne color from my Beauty Glaze palette, and I'm just using the same concealer brush to tap that from the inner corner of the eyelid to about midway. And I just didn't feel like dirtying up a bunch of brushes, so I wiped off the excess concealer and I used that same brush. Using that same concealer brush, I'm tapping in this blue shade from my Cara Beauty palette. I'm not being too precise with it because we're going over top with glitter anyway. But I like to have a colored base before I apply my glitter, so that's why I'm using eyeshadow.
Don't stop looking at me now.
For my glitter application, I'm using this NYX glitter primer, and I'm using that same faithful brush to apply it to the lid, and I'll also be using that same brush to apply the glitter. So that goes to show you that you don't really need a bunch of brushes. You can make 2 or 3 brushes work for your eyeshadow application. Once I put the primer on the lid, I just dip the brush into my glitter, and I'm stamping the glitter onto the beginning half of the eyelid, and I'm using a champagne pink shade, and then I applied more in the middle of the lid and I put a darker pink, and then you'll see me go into a more fine blue glitter. So for the first 2 glitters, I used the chunky glitter because I just liked how it looked, and then I'll be using a fine glitter on the outer corner just to make sure that it's not too heavy on the eyelid.
Sleepy eyes are closing.
Y'all, I am so in love with these colors. Like, it's just giving me mermaid pastel vibes. Like, you know, before the sun sets, when the sky would get this beautiful like lavender and pink and blue colors. I just love it.
Things that you
Now I'm just cleaning the glitter from my eyelash with a clean spoolie. This is just going to allow all of the glitter to fall out before I clean the glitter off of her face, and then this would also help to not interfere with the lash application. When I applied her lashes, I made sure to choose more natural, wispy looking lashes instead of dramatic lashes because I didn't want it to take away from the beauty of the eyeshadow look. So I just stuck them as close to her lash line as possible, then I made sure I clamped them with the tweezer. Now, because she has typically oily skin, I use the Maybelline Master Prime primer and base, which usually helps to control oils. So I just dabbed that all over her face and then I blended it in with the foundation brush.
Monet might be too much and Van Gogh might take a while.
For foundation, I'm using the Maybelline Superstay foundation, and I'm mixing 360 Mocha and 380. I believe the name is Espresso, and I just mixed that to get as close to her skin tone as possible. Now I'm applying this foundation with the back of a random eyeshadow brush, and I like to do the foundation in section because it tends to dry down quickly. So to make sure it gets an even blend, I do it in sections. So now to soak up the excess product and further blend the foundation, I'm using this Urban Decay makeup sponge, and I'm just tapping that all over her face. The sponge is damp and that allows it to absorb excess product. Now if you notice that one of her lashes isn't as close to her lash line as possible, and it's noticeable because I didn't line it with liner before I placed the eyelash, it's bothering me as I'm editing this video, but I hope it doesn't bother you too much. I did go in and fixed it when I noticed it later on. So now I'm going to highlight her face using the LA Girl Pro Concealer, and I believe I used the shade Beautiful Bronze again. And I'm just taking it on another flat concealer brush, and I'm applying that beneath her eye, and I'll be also applying it on her forehead, the bridge of her nose, her cupid's bow, and her chin. When I'm blending out the highlight, I mainly like to blend out the outer corners first, just to make sure that it blends in with the rest of the face. And then when I'm blending in the inner part, I just do that to soak up some of the product so that it's not sitting too heavy on the face, but I want that highlight to stand out. Now I'm going back in with my same Maybelline Fit Me powder, and I'm using a setting brush by Real Techniques, and I'm just pressing that powder into all the areas where I highlighted with the concealer. I like to press it into the skin because once you wipe it away, it doesn't wipe away completely. It sticks to the concealer and it's pressed into the skin. Once all the highlighted points are set, I'll be going in with my Dark to Deep contour palette by Black Radiance, and I'm using the darkest shade on my contour brush by Real Techniques, and I'm just contouring the hollows of her cheeks along the perimeter of her forehead and along her jawline. Some people say it's easy to just think of making the number 3 on the outlines of the face, which would help you. And while I'm contouring, I'm also wiping away the highlight powder just to make sure that it blends. Next, I'll be using this pressed powder by Maybelline. I believe it's the shade Nutmeg. And I'm taking that on my sponge, and I'm just using that to sharpen her contour. And then I'll also be taking this powder on a big powder brush to set the entire face. Now, to avoid the highlight and contour looking too harsh, I apply the powder on those areas as well. And then I take my setting spray and I drench my sponge with it, and then I press that into the skin, and it just allows the makeup to melt together. I learned this technique from a YouTuber whose channel name is Call Me Up. I think it's a really good technique, and if any of you are thinking of trying it, just ensure that when you're doing it, you only tap the sponge into the skin and you don't smear it or rub it, because that's gonna cause the makeup to become displaced and it's gonna be a hot mess. Now, this next step isn't absolutely necessary, but sometimes I just feel like I have to do it to make sure that the makeup is blended all together. So I just use my same foundation brush that still has a little bit of product on it, and I use that to blend everything in together. And now I'm applying blush using my Real Techniques blush brush, and I'm using the pink shade out of the Saharan Volume 1 palette. Now I'm just giving her a subtle highlight using this sober shade from the Saharan Volume 2 palette. It's a pink shimmery kind of shade. So I start by tapping that onto the nose, and then I lightly rub it just to activate it a bit, if that makes sense. And then I apply it on the high points of her cheek, her forehead, her chin, and her cupid's bow. So for lips, I'm just using my regular lip combo that I use on myself. I outline the lips with a dark brown shade, and then I take a pink lipstick shade I apply that in the center of the lips, and then I blend that with the outline or with the lip liner, and then I go over with gloss on top. For an under eye pop of color, I use the same shades that I use on our eyelid. So I take a pencil brush and I go in with hot pink, and then in the middle I use purple, and then on the outer corner I use blue. So now to complete the look, I'm just going to give her one last dose of setting spray. And that's the end of this makeup tutorial, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't subscribed as yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. Make sure I give this a big thumbs up. And I'll see you next time. Much love to y'all. Bye.